All right, so we're gonna do a walk. I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough for the reading and challenging texts in high school, and so yeah, let's get started. So let me switch to here, and this is kind of the slideshow that I do face-to-face class. So we'll do writing into the day, and then I am going to go through. I think the example is in Brightspace, so hopefully I don't have to navigate too many windows when I go to the text set presentation example. So I'm going to pull up an example. I think it's an ELA, English Language Arts example, but like I said, it doesn't really matter the content. It's just kind of like what Natalie does with how she constructs the text set proposal, and then how she describes the literacy activities and describes the text. So it doesn't matter that it's English Language Arts and you're not an English Language Arts teacher. The structure and format will be very similar. So guided discussion. If this was face-to-face, we would be doing kind of question-asking procedures, like from the last presentation where we watched the video on how to ask good questions to your students. We'll just practice that as well. So again, in your discussion thread, when you do your question, try to write it as you would like ask it face-to-face in front of students. So do the wait time activity and like turn and talk stuff. And then we'll prepare for the next class, which is actually kind of a live action role play, meaning live very much in air quotes. But we'll talk about that then. So let's get started. Reading and writing of the day. So I think I mentioned it in one or two other walkthroughs. And I think I might have showed it when I was showing the New York State Next Gen literacy standards. And then I think I pulled up the ELA standards, and this is the preamble to the ELA literacy standards. But I think this preamble should be in all the PDFs for literacy standards, including world languages. And so this is just a table on lifelong practices of readers and lifelong practices of writers. And the reason why I really like this table is because you don't have to write learning objectives or lesson plans around these kind of activities or practices. That these are practices that you could just have in your classroom around how can I get my students to be lifelong readers in my content area and lifelong writers in my content area. So I want you to take some time reading through kind of the bullet points between reading and writing, and they're very kind of I don't like this kind of like this kind of like binary between reading and writing. I think it's very much a continuum. Writers are readers, and readers if you get some practice in, will eventually could become writers. And so I would almost call these lifelong practices of learners, so lifelong learning practices. That's how I would probably do it, and maybe not kind of create this kind of artificial binary between the two. So as you read the document, I want you to think, who wrote this? What is their purpose in creating this table? To whom or what are they responding to? So the people that wrote this table were responding to education policy in New York State, but also education policy nationwide. So maybe try to take a guess of what might be going on and why they're responding to this. And then I want you to also add in your writing today, how might you apply to some of these practices in your classroom or your text set project? So how could you as a teacher take something, even if you're not ELA, and do something with your students that are in one of these two kind of columns? And then so share this on the discussion thread, and then I will come into the discussion thread and maybe tell who exactly was involved in writing these statements. So you can pause the video now, and yeah, let's see if you got some writing stamina. So set a clock for 8 minutes. Stop the video, put the clock for 8 minutes, and see if you can write sustained writing time for 8 minutes, and then come unpause me in 8 minutes. I'll see you then. All right, so I'm going to assume you've done your writing of the day. This is my text set presentation slide, so I'm going to turn to Brightspace, and I'm just going to go to course home. This is how I navigate the Brightspace area, and then I want assignment guides and exemplars. I will have this example in the Dropbox when for text set, so if you want to just see this in case. And then I also have a walkthrough video on the text set. So let's, where is it? Family Consumer Science. Here's the text. So I have a Family and Consumer Science text set proposal, which is really good as well. But we'll take it, since I was already talking Natalie up, I'm going to kind of share hers. Or no, this is actually Rebecca. So but she did a really great job too. So very similar to how the other example was. So notice the tone is, like I said, if it's easier for you to write kind of like this, good morning, Dr. Hardy. Dr. Hardy's our fictional principal. I kind of pretend to be Dr. Hardy every once in a while, but you're not writing to me, the professor, you're writing to this principal that's at your school where you're working. We're kind of role playing this. So make sure you kind of stay in that role as a writer. It helps your writing, but it also will help kind of like, ground the writing a little bit. So notice that Rebecca is first person. First person is quite acceptable. In fact, I highly encourage you to write for first person. So it's going to be a lot of I and we in this kind of proposal rather than you, second person. Please don't go back and forth between first and then second person or second person to third person. Be consistent with your narrative voice. So always say, if it's first person, I and we, and you is kind of an awkward way of writing second person. It is usually in kind of types of writing where you're given instructions or demands type of thing. So it's kind of like really positions a power dynamic between the author versus the reader. But if it's an I, and especially with this, when you're writing proposals like this to your principals or department chair, you should always be coming from the point of view you, I as a teacher. So try to be consistent with that and get some practice. I know sometimes you've been kind of told a myth about third person writing and essay writing, and not quite true. In fact, very untrue. Third person is a type of writing for a specific genre, for a specific purpose, but that is not the genre we're writing in. So first person it is. And Rebecca did a really good job of APA. So look at how APA, the one thing here is, if I was going to coach Rebecca, is if you are in APA doing direct quoting, you do need the page number. APA typically encourages you to paraphrase and synthesize, because one thing you can do with APA is you can synthesize multiple research and researchers that have similar themes included in one sentence, and then you could put those say 3 research articles in the same parenthetical citation. So you're synthesizing multiple sources, and so because you can do that, you're really not necessarily to put page numbers unless you're direct quoting, and try to not direct quote as much as possible. Although I'm going to give Becca benefit of the day. She is an English major, and so she's used to MLA, where MLA really encourages direct quoting, which I'm not going to hold it against you. Just in APA, we try to avoid it as much as possible. So if you read through Becca's opening, she does a really good job of kind of setting up the introduction to her ideas, why she's using these texts, why they're important for the students, and then she's grounding it with readings that we read. So the O'Brien motivation reading, she grounds it in. And then she starts kind of going into each text individually. So this is, and she names it. So don't say an article or an editorial from 1942 if you're a historian. I want you to find the New York Times editorial or article or something and cite it. So don't say a recipe or a cookbook or a science article or a math article. I want you to actually find the article, go on to the Millen database, find the article, and then read it. Figure out how you would use it, because once you have the specific article, it's easy to kind of come up with ideas of how you would support students in understanding the article, what type of literacies you would do, and then go from there. So again, all of these great, and then moves into the Hunger Games. Hunger Games, just one thing I'm providing this is should be italicized. So titles of novels and movies are italicized. This is, I think she puts this in quotes, which titles of articles are in quotes. So that's kind of correct. But any titles of novels, books, or movies, film, television will be in italics. And again, this is kind of the MLA English major, where again MLA really values who the authors are. So first name, last name is something I see more in MLA. In fact, I would probably just say Hunger Games and then cite Collins, 2008, rather than by, save some space. She starts kind of describing activities, what she's going to do with the reading, cites Kane to support what she's doing. And so this is why, with just kind of like, it still looks like, just kind of minor citation issues really are kind of the only thing that's kind of getting in the way. And I don't even consider these too minor. Just like page PG, that's not a APA thing. It would just be P159. And yeah, she does do when you do an APA, you do the year right after you reference the research or researchers. And so that's where you would do the year, and then page number, if it's direct quote, would go at the end of the quotes, which is fine, but it would be P159. And then if Becca just ended up paraphrasing, Becca wouldn't even need to do the page number. You can just paraphrase this. Caudal, argues and then paraphrase what Crandall would argue. So this is a really good example. I'll just I'll walk through the other facts. The facts one. We have some facts under pre-service teachers here. So let's just take a look at this one. Caroline, who was, I think, she just graduated and she won the big award for our education department. She was one of the recipients. So excellent mentor, colleague, and she did a really good mentor text. So of kind of how she organized it. Her theme was nutrition in everyday life. So it was a nutrition unit. She wrote her introduction. So this is a good example of being different than what Becca did. She didn't do the letter. She just kind of break it down into a regular proposal, which would be an introduction. I liked how she used headings to kind of like guide where she was going, and then kind of used headings for each kind of text she was using, but also kind of thematizing how those texts would be used. So I think Caroline's is a really good example that's not kind of like Dear Dr. Hardy type of thing. Caroline does a really good job of citing APA and synthesizing the sources. And so I would recommend giving a read through, and regardless if these are your content area, they would be good examples of how to write. This is how to get a 3. This is what I'm looking for on a 3. And like I said, with the TechSet proposal paper, I'm picky, and so I have like a 65%, right, where I go, you don't get a 2, and it's revision time if you're trying to get a B. So if you look through, read carefully, and get started, and kind of do this thoughtfully without trying to rush through 2 hours before the due date, and just you'll end up rewriting it anyway. So get started on kind of a good one that looks like this, and you should be okay. And that is my TechSet overview. So let's get back to the presentation and then get me going. All right, so this is the guided discussion. So this is what you will be doing in your thread. So I want you to you're coming at this thread from the point of view of your content area, what you're going to be doing. And so talk about major concepts in your subject areas. So subject areas for social studies and family consumer science, those subject areas are kind of broad and diverse, right? So social studies is economics, geography, world history, American history, civics, all that. And then family consumer science is nutrition and sewing and cooking and child psychology and architecture. So what are the major concepts? And then so think about what are the major issues in your subject areas that are trying to discuss, and then how can you frame a problem for students to study on which they could take a stand. So with the reading that we read, the teachers framed a problem where the students can take a stand using text and then challenging maybe norms or maybe harmful narratives within these frames, and using text. And then think about what are the social justice implications of those concepts. And every discipline has, well, you can think of social justice, but you can also economic justice, ecological justice as well, if that makes it helpful for your content area. So I could see like earth science or the sciences maybe focusing, well, social justice issues, but it might be like ecological justice, like e-waste, plastics in the water cycle, microplastics in the water cycle, microplastics in human blood, which are really bad problems, and we need scientists to help solve these problems rather quickly. And so hopefully that makes, so you can think about social, economic, or ecological implications within your discipline, and then how could the concepts advance, and then within this frame, how might the concepts advance systemic racism unless questioned or analyzed critically. And so kind of like we need to uncover the veil or the spectacle that's going on to kind of reveal the structural issues that are causing these issues. In the case of the chapter we read, they were uncovering systemic racism issues, but you can also uncover systemic issues regarding income or ecological kind of problems that are kind of hidden away. So you can talk about environmental racism, which is also can be considered environmental classism, because usually environmental disasters are usually done where poor people are. So that could be something you can think about as well. And this question is coming from the end of the chapter. So just, write a discussion thread, kind of synthesizing this, how it would look in your subject area, propose it, also craft a question to ask your colleagues, and then participate in answering your colleagues' questions. And that is our discussion for today. And next time we are going to kind of read a study of how we can engage adolescents with multiple texts, which is what we're writing a paper on. So this is kind of the penultimate activity before we get into a role play activity. So the last kind of reading for this module. We're gonna discuss it next time. I'm probably gonna record it in about 7 minutes. So, but you'll be doing this tomorrow or the next day or the day after. I'll see you then.